My name is Kathy, and at 29 years old, I never imagined my own sister would destroy my life with a single accusation. Standing here at my apartment door, holding an eviction notice while my phone buzzes endlessly with hateful messages from family members, I can barely breathe. It all started at Megan's wedding reception, when she screamed that $5,000 was missing from the gift box, her finger pointing directly at me in front of 200 guests. That moment shattered my entire world in seconds. Before I continue with this heartbreaking story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Please hit that like button if you've ever been falsely accused, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories. Trust me, what happens next will shock you as much as it shocked me. Let's dive into how my perfect family turned into my worst nightmare. 3 months before that devastating wedding day, my relationship with my older sister Megan seemed unbreakable. At 31, she was everything our parents wanted in a daughter. A successful lawyer at a prestigious firm downtown, engaged to Tyler from a wealthy family, and living in a beautiful suburban home. Me? I was the struggling freelance graphic designer, working from my cramped one-bedroom apartment, juggling clients who paid late and bills that never stopped coming. Our mother Helen, 58 years old and still treating us like we were competing in some twisted pageant, had always made her preference clear. Megan was her golden child who could do no wrong, while I was the disappointment who chose art over a stable career. Dad, Robert, at 60, had long ago given up trying to balance Helen's favoritism, choosing silence over confrontation. He owned a small accounting firm and buried himself in numbers rather than family dynamics. When Megan asked me to be her maid of honor, I was genuinely touched. We were sitting in her pristine living room, wedding magazines scattered across her glass coffee table, when she grabbed my hand and said those words I'd been hoping to hear. Helen's reaction was immediate and predictable. She literally gasped from across the room where she was examining fabric swatches, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the expensive material. "Are you sure about this, Megan? You know Rachel has been hoping for this honor, and she's so much more organized than Kathy." Rachel, our 27-year-old cousin, and Aunt Linda's pride and joy, had indeed been circling like a vulture since the engagement announcement. Aunt Linda, Helen's younger sister at 55, was the family's unofficial news network, spreading gossip faster than social media ever could. Rachel worked at a marketing firm, and never missed an opportunity to mention her stable income and recent promotion, especially when I was within earshot. My financial situation was dire, though I tried to hide it from everyone except Megan. Credit cards maxed out from trying to keep up with equipment upgrades for my business, 2 months behind on rent after losing a major client, and my car payment overdue by 3 weeks. The numbers haunted me every night. When I finally broke down and confided in Megan during one of our wedding planning sessions, she pulled me into a hug that smelled like her expensive perfume. "Listen, after the wedding, Tyler and I are going to help you get back on your feet," she promised, her engagement ring catching the light as she wiped away my tears. "We're family, Kathy. That's what we do for each other. Just focus on making my wedding perfect, and we'll handle your situation afterward. Tyler's family has connections everywhere. We'll find you steady clients." Those words gave me hope I desperately needed. I threw myself into maid of honor duties with renewed energy, even though it meant spending money I didn't have. The bridesmaid dress alone cost $400, not including alterations. Then there were the shoes, the bachelorette party I was expected to plan and partially fund, the bridal shower gift, and countless other expenses that seemed to multiply daily. I put it all on my already strained credit cards, telling myself it was an investment in our relationship and my future stability. The wedding preparations consumed the next 3 months. Megan became increasingly stressed as the date approached, and I absorbed her anxiety like a sponge. Helen's constant criticism didn't help. Every decision I made as maid of honor was wrong in her eyes. The bachelorette party was too cheap, the games at the bridal shower were childish, and my speech draft was too sentimental. People want to laugh at weddings, Kathy, not cry, she'd said, red pen slashing through my heartfelt words. 2 weeks before the wedding, things took an interesting turn. Tyler's parents, the Worthingtons, old money from the pharmaceutical industry, hosted an elaborate rehearsal dinner at their country club. That's when I noticed the cracks in Meghan and Tyler's perfect facade. They kept having whispered arguments in corners, and I overheard something about renovation costs and his parents' disapproval. When I asked Meghan about it later, she brushed it off with a forced smile. Just wedding stress. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was, but I pretended to understand. The week before the wedding, I practically lived at Meghan's house, helping with last-minute preparations. Rachel was there constantly too, offering to help, but mostly getting in the way and making snide comments about how tired I looked. Maybe you should invest in some better concealer, she suggested one morning, her own face perfectly made up despite the early hour. The camera catches everything, and we can't have the maid of honor looking haggard in the photos. Helen assigned various family members different responsibilities for the wedding day. Uncle George would handle parking coordination, Aunt Linda would manage the guest book, Rachel would oversee the flower arrangements, and I was put in charge of the gift table and card box. It's the most important job, Helen said, though her tone suggested otherwise. People trust family with their generous gifts. Just don't let anyone you don't recognize near that table. The irony of her words would haunt me later. As the wedding day approached, I pushed aside my financial worries and focused on being the best maid of honor possible. I wanted to prove to Helen, to the family, and maybe even to myself that I was worthy of the role. I practiced my speech until I could recite it without tears, confirmed all vendor arrivals, and created detailed timeline charts that even Rachel grudgingly admitted were impressive. The night before the wedding, Meghan and I had one last sister moment in her childhood bedroom at our parents' house. Surrounded by photos of us growing up, she seemed vulnerable for the first time in months. I'm scared, Kathy, she admitted, clutching the custom silk pajamas Tyler's mother had gifted her. What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm not cut out for this life? I held her hand and reminded her of all the reasons she fell in love with Tyler. His kindness, his ambition, their shared dreams of traveling the world and starting a family. You're going to be the most beautiful bride, I assured her. And Tyler is lucky to have you. Tomorrow is going to be perfect. If only I had known how wrong I was. If only I had paid attention to the signs, the whispered conversations, the worried looks between Meghan and Tyler, Rachel's unusual interest in the wedding logistics, and Helen's increasingly strange behavior around me. But I was too caught up in making everything perfect, too desperate to prove my worth to notice the trap being set around me. The next day would change everything, and the sister I thought I knew would reveal a side of herself that still makes my blood run cold. The morning of Meghan's wedding dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect June days that wedding planners dream about. I arrived at the venue, an elegant historic mansion, at 6 a.m, running on 3 hours of sleep and pure adrenaline. The hairstylist and makeup artist were already setting up in the bridal suite, and I immediately got to work checking off my detailed timeline. Every minute was accounted for, every potential crisis anticipated, except for the one that would destroy my life. Meghan arrived at 7, glowing with bridal excitement, but with an underlying tension I attributed to normal wedding day nerves. As I helped her into her $12,000 Vera Wang gown, careful not to smudge her professionally applied makeup, she kept checking her phone. Tyler's parents are already here, she said, her voice tight. They want to review the seating arrangements one more time. Can you believe that? On my wedding day. I smoothed down her train and adjusted her veil, trying to calm her nerves. The other bridesmaids trickled in, including Rachel, who seemed unusually eager to help. She kept offering to check on various arrangements, particularly hovering near the area where the gift table was being set up in the reception hall. "I just want to make sure everything is perfect for our Megan," she said sweetly, though something in her eyes made me uneasy. By 10 o'clock, the venue was buzzing with activity. Flowers were being arranged, the band was doing sound checks, and early guests were beginning to arrive. Helen swept in wearing a mother-of-the-bride dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, immediately finding fault with the ribbon color on the church pews. "It's champagne, not ivory like we discussed," she hissed at me, as if I had personally dyed them the wrong shade. The photographer corralled us for pre-ceremony photos, and I tried to lose myself in the joy of the moment. Megan looked absolutely stunning, every inch the princess bride she dreamed of being since we were little girls playing dress-up in our mother's closet. During a brief break, she pulled me aside near the garden fountain. "Kathy, I need you to do me a huge favor. Can you watch the gift table during the ceremony? I know you're supposed to be standing with me, but Tyler's really paranoid about security after his cousin's wedding had some crashers steal gifts." My heart sank a little. I'd been looking forward to standing beside her at the altar, but I couldn't refuse her request on her wedding day. "Of course, if that's what you need," I agreed, pushing down my disappointment. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "You're the only one I trust with this." Mother wanted Rachel to do it, but I insisted it had to be you. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock. By 1:30, I was stationed at the gift table in the reception hall, watching as guests dropped off beautifully wrapped packages and envelopes. The card box, an elaborate creation decorated to match the wedding theme, sat prominently in the center. I carefully logged each gift in the notebook Megan had provided, making sure to match cards with packages when possible. 15 minutes before the ceremony, disaster struck in the form of a wardrobe malfunction. One of the bridesmaids rushed into the reception hall, nearly in tears. "Kathy, we need you. Megan's bustle came undone, and she's having a meltdown. She says only you know how to fix it properly." I looked at the gift table, then at the panicked bridesmaid. The ceremony was about to start, and Megan needed me. "Can you watch this for just a minute?" I asked a server, who was adjusting table settings nearby. He nodded, and I raced back to the bridal suite. Megan was indeed in tears, her bustle hanging awkwardly and threatening to trip her on her walk down the aisle. It took me nearly 10 minutes to fix it properly, repin her veil, and touch up her makeup where tears had smudged it. "I'm sorry I pulled you away," she said, gripping my hands. "But I knew you were the only one who could fix it. You always fix everything for me." There was something odd in her tone, but I was too focused on getting her to the church on time to analyze it. We hurried to the ceremony entrance where Robert was waiting to walk her down the aisle, and I slipped into the reception hall to return to my post. The gift table looked exactly as I'd left it, the server I'd asked to watch it nowhere in sight. I resumed my position, though most guests were now seated for the ceremony. Through the large windows, I could see the outdoor ceremony space where 200 guests waited for the bride's entrance. The string quartet began playing, and I watched from afar as my sister married the man of her dreams, feeling like an outsider looking in on a life I'd never have. The ceremony lasted 45 minutes. During that time, only 2 late arriving guests dropped off gifts, both of which I carefully logged. When the ceremony ended and guests began moving toward the cocktail hour on the terrace, I stayed at my post, making sure no gifts were left unattended. Rachel appeared at my elbow, startling me. "Beautiful ceremony," she said, eyeing the gift table. Quite a haul already. The Worthingtons certainly have generous friends. Something about the way she lingered made me uncomfortable. Don't you want to congratulate Megan and Tyler? I suggested. She smiled, that fake smile she'd perfected over the years. Oh, I will. Just wanted to see if you needed any help here. Must be boring, standing guard while everyone else celebrates. I assured her I was fine and practically had to shoo her away. The cocktail hour passed without incident. I could hear laughter and music from the terrace, smell the delicious appetizers I wouldn't get to taste. A few more gifts arrived, mostly from elderly guests who moved more slowly. Finally, as guests began filing into the reception hall for dinner, I was able to briefly leave my post to take my place at the head table. Dinner was a blur of toasts, clinking glasses, and forced smiles for the photographer. I gave my carefully prepared speech, which received polite applause though Helen looked like she'd sucked a lemon throughout. Megan and Tyler seemed happy, though I noticed he kept whispering urgently in her ear between courses. As the band began playing and guests moved toward the dance floor, Megan caught my arm. Could you check the gift table once more? I know I'm being paranoid, but Tyler's really worried about security. Dutifully, I returned to the gift table, now piled high with wrapped boxes and the card box stuffed with envelopes. Everything appeared to be in order. I was adjusting a precariously balanced box when I heard it, Megan's scream cutting through the music and chatter like a knife. I turned to see her standing near the card box with Tyler, her face contorted in shock and rage. $5,000 is missing, she shrieked, loud enough for the entire reception to hear. The band stopped mid-song, and 200 faces turned toward the commotion. My blood ran cold as Megan's eyes found mine across the room. Kathy was the only one watching the gifts. She's the only one who had access. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. I stood frozen as Megan stormed toward me, her wedding gown billowing behind her like an avenging angel. How could you? She screamed in my face. I trusted you. I knew you were desperate for money, but to steal from your own sister at her wedding. Megan, I didn't. I would never. The words stuck in my throat as Helen materialized beside her daughter, her face a mask of triumphant vindication. I knew she couldn't be trusted. Look at her debts. She's been desperate for months, borrowing money from everyone. Of course she took it when she saw the opportunity. The room spun around me as guests murmured in shock. Tyler's parents looked absolutely disgusted, his mother covering her mouth in horror. Check the security footage, I managed to say, my voice shaking. It will show I didn't take anything. I was only gone for 10 minutes to help Megan with her dress. Tyler stepped forward, his face grave. We already checked. The security system mysteriously malfunctioned for a 30-minute period this afternoon. Right around the time of the ceremony. How convenient. The way he said it made it clear he thought I had somehow arranged this. But I was fixing Megan's bustle. She called me away. I looked desperately at my sister, begging her to confirm my story. She crossed her arms, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. You were the only one I told about the cash gift from Tyler's grandmother. $5,000 in an envelope marked with her initials. And now it's gone, and you were the only one with access. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Megan, please, you know me. I would never steal from you. We're sisters. You promised to help me after the wedding, remember? Why would I jeopardize that for money I knew you'd notice was missing? Because you're desperate, Rachel chimed in, appearing at Helen's side like a vulture. Everyone knows about your financial situation. You've been complaining about it for months. And now with proof right in front of us, you're still trying to deny it. The crowd of guests had formed a circle around us, everyone staring at me like I was some kind of criminal. I felt like I was suffocating in my bridesmaid dress, the fabric suddenly too tight, too hot. Aunt Linda was already on her phone, no doubt spreading the news to family members who couldn't attend. "I think we should call the police," someone suggested from the crowd. "No," Megan said coldly. "She's still my sister, despite what she's done. But I want her out of here. Now." She turned to two of Tyler's groomsmen, both built like football players. "Please escort her out. And Kathy," she added, her voice dripping with venom, "don't ever contact me again. You're dead to me." The groomsmen moved toward me, and I backed away, tears streaming down my face. "Megan, please. Check everywhere else. Question other people. I didn't take your money." But she had already turned her back on me, collapsing into Tyler's arms in a dramatic show of betrayal and grief. As the groomsmen firmly guided me toward the exit, I caught sight of my father standing near the bar, his face pale with shock. "Dad," I called out, reaching for him. He looked at me for a long moment, then slowly shook his head and turned away. That silent rejection hurt almost as much as Megan's public accusation. The groomsmen deposited me in the parking lot like trash being taken out. I stood there in my $400 bridesmaid dress, watching through the windows as the reception continued without me. The band had resumed playing, and incredibly, people were beginning to dance again, the scandal of the theft already becoming just another piece of wedding drama to discuss over champagne. I fumbled for my phone, calling Emma, my only real friend, who hadn't been invited to the wedding. "I need you to pick me up," I sobbed into the phone. "Something terrible has happened." As I waited for her, I watched my family through those windows, saw them comforting Megan, saw them toasting and laughing as if I had never existed at all. In the span of 20 minutes, I had gone from devoted sister to family pariah, and I still couldn't understand how it had happened so fast, so completely. When Emma's car pulled up, I climbed in and finally let myself completely break down. "They think I stole from her," I gasped between sobs. "My own sister thinks I'm a thief." Emma held me as I cried, not asking questions yet, just offering the comfort my family had denied me. As we drove away from the venue, I didn't know that this was only the beginning of my nightmare, that my family's cruelty would escalate to levels I couldn't imagine, and that the truth behind the missing money was more twisted than any wedding guest could have guessed. The next morning, I woke up on Emma's couch with swollen eyes and a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. Every notification felt like another dagger to my heart. Aunt Linda had worked through the night, spreading the scandal across every social media platform and family group chat. Her Facebook post, shared 37 times by various relatives, read, "Absolutely disgusted by what happened at dear Megan's wedding. To think we welcomed a thief into our family celebrations. Some people have no shame, stealing from their own sister on her wedding day." The comments underneath were even worse. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were calling me garbage. Distant relatives were sharing their own theories about my supposed criminal history, and family friends were expressing shock that quiet little Kathy turned out to be such a monster. Someone had even created a meme using a photo from the wedding prep, circling my face with the caption "Spot the Thief." It already had over 100 reactions. My mother's call came at 8:17 in the morning. I stared at her contact photo, a picture of us from last Christmas, when she actually smiled at me, before answering with trembling hands. "Return the money immediately, or you are no longer my daughter." Helen's voice was ice cold, no trace of the mother, who had once kissed my scraped knees and tucked me into bed. "You have brought unimaginable shame upon this family. The Worthingtons are mortified, and Megan is devastated. How could you do this to your own sister? Mom, please. I didn't take anything, I pleaded, my voice raw from crying. You have to believe me. Why would I steal money I knew would be missed? It doesn't make sense. But she had already hung up, leaving me talking to dead air. I tried calling back, but she had blocked my number. My own mother had blocked me without even listening to my side of the story. Robert was my next attempt. Surely my father, quiet and logical, would at least hear me out. But his phone rang endlessly before going to voicemail. I left 3 messages, each more desperate than the last, begging him to call me back, to meet me somewhere, to just give me 5 minutes to explain. He never responded, though I later learned from Emma that he was telling people I was Helen's problem to deal with now. By noon, my professional life began crumbling alongside my personal one. 3 clients cancelled their contracts via email, all using vague language about taking their business in a different direction. But I knew the truth when the 4th client was honest enough to write, "I'm sorry, Kathy, but I can't work with someone who would steal from their own family. It's a trust issue." In our small city, word traveled fast, and my reputation was being destroyed in real time. The formal message from Megan came through Tyler's law firm email at 2 in the afternoon. The subject line read, "Demand for restitution," and the cold legal language made my hands shake. They were demanding the immediate return of $5,000, or they would pursue criminal charges. The letter mentioned security footage, witness testimonies, and my admitted financial desperation as evidence against me. It was signed by Tyler, but I knew Megan had dictated every word. What hurt most was the personal note she'd added at the bottom. "I've been telling Tyler for weeks that you've been acting strange, always asking about our finances and the wedding gifts. Now I realize you were planning this all along. I just never thought you'd actually go through with it. Mom was right about you all these years." Those words cut deeper than any legal threat could. I discovered Megan had been poisoning the well even further when my college roommate texted me, "Is it true what Megan's saying? That you've stolen from her before? She's telling everyone about missing jewelry and money from her purse over the years." This was a complete fabrication. I had never taken anything from my sister, not even borrowed clothes without asking. But the lie was spreading like wildfire, each retelling adding new embellishments. My landlord called that evening. "Ms. Henderson, I'm sorry, but I need to give you notice to vacate. I've had 3 calls today from concerned neighbors about having a thief in the building. Whether it's true or not, I can't have this kind of drama. You have 30 days. I tried to explain that I was innocent, that this was all a misunderstanding, but he'd made up his mind. "Your rent's already late anyway," he added. "This just makes the decision easier." Emma returned from work to find me cataloging the disaster on her coffee table. Printed emails from cancelled clients, screenshots of social media posts, the legal threat from Tyler's firm, and the eviction notice. "This is insane," she said, reading through everything. "They've completely destroyed your life in less than 24 hours. And all over money that might not even exist." "What do you mean?" I asked, looking up from my laptop, where I was desperately searching for new freelance opportunities. Emma sat beside me, her marketing brain already analyzing the situation. "Think about it, Kathy. Who gives $5,000 in cash as a wedding gift? Even wealthy people write checks, or do bank transfers now. And how convenient that the security footage is corrupted for exactly the time period when this supposed theft occurred." Her words sparked something in my mind, but I was too emotionally destroyed to pursue it. That evening brought fresh hell in the form of a family group message I was removed from after reading. Helen had written, "For those asking, yes, Kathy has always had sticky fingers. I've been protecting her for years, but I can't anymore. If anyone has ever noticed missing items when she visited, now you know why." The replies came fast and furious. Suddenly everyone had a story about something that went missing when I was around. Aunt Linda's reading glasses at Thanksgiving 3 years ago, Cousin Jerome's phone charger at a family barbecue, even Great Aunt Mildred claimed I'd stolen cookies from her kitchen when I was 7. It was a feeding frenzy of false memories and projected blame, years of minor inconveniences suddenly attributed to my supposed kleptomania. Rachel's contribution was particularly venomous. "I'm so disappointed but not surprised. She's always been jealous of Megan's success. Remember when she accidentally spilled wine on Megan's law school graduation dress? We all knew it was deliberate. This is just escalation." That incident had been a genuine accident that Megan herself had laughed about at the time, but now it was being rewritten as part of my villainous origin story. By the end of the week, I was a complete pariah. I couldn't go to the grocery store without running into someone who'd heard the story. The cashier at my regular coffee shop, who'd always chatted pleasantly with me, now silently processed my order with obvious disdain. My hairdresser cancelled my upcoming appointment with a transparent excuse. Even my doctor's office called to say they were streamlining their patient list. The final straw came when I tried to visit my parents' house to retrieve some belongings I'd left there. It was Tuesday afternoon, and I knew Robert would be at work. I still had my key, but when I tried to use it, the locks had been changed. As I stood there processing this new rejection, the door opened to reveal Helen, perfectly composed as always. "I specifically told you to return the money, not come here," she said, blocking the doorway like I was some kind of home invader. "Until you make this right with Megan, you are not welcome in this house." I tried once more to plead my innocence, to make her see reason, but she cut me off with a raised hand. "Your father and I have discussed this extensively. We've decided to remove you from our will and all family trusts. The money that would have gone to you will be added to Megan's portion, as compensation for what you've stolen." She paused, seeming to savor the devastation on my face. "Oh, and I've gathered your things. Wait here." She disappeared inside and returned with 2 garbage bags that she thrust at me. "Everything you've left here over the years. Don't come back." Through the black plastic, I could see photo albums, childhood mementos, and Christmas ornaments I'd collected all jumbled together like actual garbage. As I stood there holding the bags, Robert appeared in the hallway behind Helen. Our eyes met for a moment, and I saw a flicker of something that might have been regret or doubt. But then Helen said sharply, "Robert, go back to your office," and he retreated without a word, leaving me standing on the porch like a delivery person who'd overstayed their welcome. Emma helped me carry the bags to her car, where I finally broke down completely. "They changed the locks," I sobbed. "Like I'm some kind of dangerous criminal. Like 29 years of being their daughter meant nothing." Emma held me while I cried, then said something that would prove prophetic. "There's more to this story, Kathy. This level of coordination, this complete character assassination, it's not just about missing money. Someone orchestrated this." That night, as I lay on Emma's couch scrolling through job listings in other cities, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Hope flared briefly that maybe a family member was reaching out from a different phone. Instead, I heard Megan's voice, cold and unfamiliar. "I know you're probably planning to skip town with my money. Just know that I've filed a police report. They'll be contacting you soon for questioning. I suggest you get a lawyer, though I doubt you can afford one now." "Megan, wait," I begged. "You're my sister. You know me better than anyone. How can you believe I would do this to you?" There was a long pause, and when she spoke again, her voice had a strange quality to it. I know exactly who you are, Kathy. I've always known. The only difference is now everyone else knows too. Then she hung up, leaving me with the chilling certainty that my sister, my protector, my best friend, had become my worst enemy. The irony wasn't lost on me. A week ago, I was worried about making rent and paying off credit cards. Now I was facing complete social exile, potential criminal charges, and the loss of every relationship I'd valued. All over money I'd never seen, never touched, and was beginning to suspect never existed at all. But who would believe the family thief when she claimed innocence? Who would stand by Kathy the pariah when the entire Henderson family had closed ranks against her? Only Emma believed in me, and as I finally drifted off to sleep that night, I clung to that single thread of faith like a lifeline. Tomorrow, I decided, I would stop crying and start fighting back. Someone had orchestrated my downfall, and I was going to find out who and why. Little did I know that the truth would be more painful than any false accusation, and the real thieves in my family were far closer than I'd ever imagined. 3 weeks after the wedding disaster, I sat at Emma's kitchen table surrounded by notebooks, printed screenshots, and timeline charts that would make any detective proud. My tears had dried up, replaced by a burning determination to prove my innocence. Emma had taken time off work to help me investigate, and together we'd begun noticing patterns that didn't add up in the neat narrative my family had constructed. "Look at this," Emma said, pointing to her laptop screen, where she'd created a detailed timeline of the wedding day. The security footage was corrupted from 1:45 to 2:15. That's 30 minutes. But you were only gone from the gift table for 10 minutes max to fix Meghan's dress. So why corrupt an extra 20 minutes of footage? The question had been nagging at me too. If someone wanted to frame me, they'd only need to corrupt the footage for the time I was actually away. The extra 20 minutes suggested something else had happened during that window. We'd also discovered something interesting about the $5,000 cash gift supposedly from Tyler's grandmother. Emma had done some social media stalking and found that Mrs. Worthington had been in the hospital that entire week with a broken hip. She posted about it on Facebook, Emma showed me. Thanking the nurses, complaining about hospital food. Does someone in the hospital for surgery carry $5,000 in cash to give to their grandson's bride? The more we investigated, the more suspicious details emerged. Rachel's behavior, in particular, stood out like a red flag. She'd been unusually interested in the gift table, hovering around it multiple times throughout the day. But what really caught our attention was her recent financial activity. Through mutual friends and some careful social media investigation, we learned that Rachel had suddenly paid off her significant student loans just days after the wedding. In cash. That's got to be at least $30,000, Emma calculated. Where does a marketing coordinator get that kind of money? I remembered Rachel complaining just months ago about her crushing student debt, how it was preventing her from moving out of her mother's apartment. Now suddenly she was debt-free, and had put a deposit on a luxury condo downtown. Armed with these suspicions, I decided to confront Rachel directly. It was risky, but I was desperate for answers. I waited outside her office building on a Thursday evening, my heart pounding as employees streamed out. When she finally emerged, designer handbag on her arm and talking animatedly on her phone, I stepped into her path. The blood drained from her face when she saw me. "I'll call you back," she said quickly into her phone, then tried to sidestep me. "I have nothing to say to you, thief." But I blocked her path again, noticing how her eyes darted nervously around the street. "Funny you should mention thieves, Rachel. How did you pay off your student loans so quickly?" "That's none of your business," she snapped, but her voice wavered. "My boyfriend helped me out. James is very generous." James, her boyfriend of 6 months, who worked security at the wedding venue. The same venue where the security footage had mysteriously corrupted at just the right time. The pieces were clicking together in my mind. James works at the Rosewood Manor, doesn't he? I pressed. He would have access to the security system. How convenient that the footage disappeared right when the supposed theft occurred. Rachel's face went from pale to flushed. You're insane. First you steal from Megan, now you're trying to blame everyone else. No wonder the whole family hates you. But I'd struck a nerve. She was fidgeting with her purse strap, a tell she'd had since we were kids playing poker at family gatherings. You know what's really interesting, Rachel? The security footage was corrupted for 30 minutes, but I was only gone for 10. What happened in those other 20 minutes? What were you doing while everyone was watching the ceremony? I was watching the ceremony too, she said too quickly, too loudly. A passing couple looked our way curiously. Rachel lowered her voice. You're harassing me. I could call the police. But she made no move for her phone. Instead, she glanced around again, as if looking for an escape route, or checking for witnesses. I decided to bluff, hoping to shock more information out of her. I hired a private investigator. They are pulling bank records, checking security footage from nearby businesses. The truth is going to come out, Rachel. Do you really want to go down for Megan's insurance fraud? The last part was a complete guess, but her reaction told me I'd hit gold. Her eyes widened in panic. I don't know what you're talking about. There was no fraud. The money was real. Then, realizing what she'd just implied, she clamped her mouth shut. But it was too late. She'd just admitted to knowing details about the money that she shouldn't have known if she wasn't involved. How do you know the money was real if it was stolen? I pressed. Were you there when it was counted? When it was put in the envelope? Or maybe when it was taken out? Rachel's phone rang, and she grabbed for it like a lifeline. It's James. I have to go. She started walking rapidly toward the parking garage, but I followed. Did Megan promise you a cut? Is that how you paid off your loans? 10,000 to help frame me. I was guessing at numbers, but again, her reaction was telling. She spun around, her face contorted with anger and fear. You don't know anything. You're just a pathetic failure trying to drag everyone down with you. Megan was right about you. She said you'd try to blame everyone else. When did she say that? I asked quickly. Before the wedding. Was this planned, Rachel? But James's car pulled up to the curb, and Rachel practically dove into the passenger seat. Through the window, I could see James gesturing angrily as they drove away. I managed to record part of our conversation on my phone, including her slip about knowing the money was real. That evening, Emma helped me analyze what we'd learned. She definitely knows more than she's saying, Emma concluded. And that bit about insurance fraud, her reaction was too strong for it to be nothing. We decided to dig deeper into Megan and Tyler's finances. What we found through public records and social media was illuminating. 6 months before the wedding, Megan and Tyler had purchased a historic home in the expensive Riverside district. They'd posted enthusiastically about their renovation plans on Instagram, complete with architect renderings and inspiration boards. But then the posts stopped abruptly 3 months before the wedding, replaced by vague mentions of construction delays and budget adjustments. Through the contractor's public Facebook page, we found complaints from subcontractors about late payments. One electrician had even posted, "When millionaire lawyers can't pay their bills on time, but still drive matching Mercedes." The comment was quickly deleted, but Emma had screenshot it. It seemed the perfect couple, was having serious financial troubles. But wait, I said, studying the timeline. If they were having money problems, how could they afford such an elaborate wedding? Emma pulled up the wedding photographer's Instagram. Look at the vendor tags. This photographer charges $15,000 minimum. The florist is even more expensive. That venue costs $20,000 just to book. This wedding had to cost over $100,000. We kept digging and found something crucial. 3 weeks before the wedding, Tyler's parents had posted on Facebook about their disappointment in certain financial decisions and their belief that young people need to learn responsibility before receiving family support. It was vague but pointed, and several family friends had commented with supportive messages about tough love and standing firm. They cut them off, Emma said excitedly. Tyler's rich parents cut off the money tap right before the wedding. Megan and Tyler must have been desperate. The pieces were falling into place. Expensive renovation gone over budget, wedding vendors to pay, and suddenly no family money to cover it. It was the perfect recipe for desperation. I remembered now how stressed Megan had been in those final weeks, how she and Tyler had whispered arguments at the rehearsal dinner. Her question about whether she was making a mistake. Was she talking about marriage? Or about what she was planning to do to me? The thought that my sister had deliberately orchestrated my destruction for money made me physically ill. But we needed more proof. Emma suggested hiring an actual private investigator, someone who could access records we couldn't. It's expensive, she warned, but if we're right about this, you need professional help to prove it. I laughed bitterly. With no income and mounting bills, expensive was an understatement. But Emma, amazing friend that she was, offered to loan me the money. Consider it an investment in justice, she said. The investigator, a former police detective named Marcus Chen, took our case with interest. Family fraud is more common than people think, he told us at our first meeting. And this story has all the hallmarks. The corrupted security footage especially. That takes inside knowledge and planning. He promised to dig into financial records, insurance claims, and the venue security system. While we waited for his initial findings, I confronted another puzzle piece, Helen's involvement. My mother's instant belief in my guilt, her ready-made stories about my supposed history of theft, the speed with which she'd changed the locks and written me out of the will. It felt rehearsed, planned. But surely my own mother wouldn't be part of a conspiracy to frame me. Would she? Emma had a theory about that too. Your mom has always favored Megan. What if Megan went to her before the wedding, planted seeds of doubt about you? Made her think she was protecting the family by going along with it. It was possible, but it suggested a level of manipulation from my sister that I still struggled to accept despite mounting evidence. 3 days after hiring Marcus, he called with his first discovery. The venue security system was accessed remotely the morning of the wedding. The username belongs to James Morrison, Rachel's boyfriend. But here's the interesting part. The command to corrupt specific footage was entered at exactly 1:15, when James was photographed helping with ceremony setup. Someone else used his access. Rachel, I breathed. She must have used his login. Marcus agreed it was likely. But proving it is another matter. We need more evidence, preferably something that connects your sister to the plan. He was going to interview vendors and venue staff, looking for anyone who might have seen something suspicious. That night, I lay awake on Emma's couch thinking about the elaborate web of deception surrounding me. If we were right, then Megan, Rachel, and possibly Helen had conspired to frame me for a theft that never happened, all for insurance money to cover their financial problems. The sister who had promised to help me get back on my feet had instead pushed me off a cliff. But knowing the truth and proving it were two different things. My family had done an excellent job of destroying my credibility. Who would believe the desperate, financially struggling sister over the successful lawyer and her prominent family? I needed concrete evidence, something undeniable. And I was running out of time. The police investigation was moving slowly, but it was moving. If charges were filed before I could prove my innocence, I might end up in jail for a crime that existed only in my family's twisted imagination. Marcus Chen called me on a rain-soaked Tuesday morning with news that would change everything. "You need to sit down for this," he said, his usually professional voice carrying an edge of disbelief. Emma and I were already seated at her kitchen table, the command center for our investigation, but his words still made my stomach drop. "I've uncovered evidence of a conspiracy that goes deeper than you imagined. Can you meet me at my office in an hour?" The drive to his downtown office felt endless, every red light an eternity. Emma gripped my hand as we rode the elevator to the third floor, both of us silent with anticipation and dread. Marcus's office was exactly what you'd expect from a former detective, organized, minimal, with a large whiteboard covered in our case details. But today, there were new additions to the board that made my breath catch. "Let's start with what you suspected," Marcus began, pulling out a thick folder. The $5,000 theft was indeed an insurance scam. But it wasn't just about the money. He spread out several documents on his desk: bank statements, insurance forms, and printed email exchanges. "Your sister and brother-in-law didn't just need $5,000. They needed $50,000 to avoid defaulting on their renovation loan." My legs felt weak even though I was sitting. 50,000. But the insurance claim was only for 5,000. Marcus nodded grimly. "That's where it gets interesting. The wedding insurance only covered 5,000 for theft. But Megan and Tyler took out 3 other insurance policies, one for wedding cancellation, one for vendor issues, and a personal articles policy for supposed family heirloom jewelry that was allegedly stolen the same day." "But there was no jewelry theft reported," Emma interjected. Marcus smiled without humor. "Not publicly. But claims were filed claiming that family heirloom pieces worth $30,000 went missing from the bridal suite during the reception. Guess who had access to that room?" My mind raced. "The maid of honor." "Me?" "Exactly. And here's the kicker, the jewelry never existed. I tracked down the appraiser who supposedly valued these pieces. He's been out of business for 2 years, and his signature was forged on the documentation." Marcus pulled out another paper. "But the insurance company paid out based on the police report of the theft at the wedding. Your sister used the commotion about the 5,000 to establish a pattern of theft, making the jewelry claim seem legitimate." I felt sick. The depth of planning this required was staggering. "But how did you prove all this?" Marcus's expression grew even more serious. "That's where your cousin Rachel comes in. She was promised $10,000 for her help with the security footage and corroborating the theft story. But she only received $5,000. She's been pressuring Megan for the rest, and their text messages are very revealing." He handed me printed screenshots of a text conversation. Rachel's messages grew increasingly angry. "You promised $10K. I risked everything helping you." Megan's response: "You got enough to pay your loans. Be grateful and keep quiet." But the most damning message was Rachel's threat: "Pay me or I tell Kathy everything about how her own mother helped plan this." The room spun. "My mother? Helen was in on this." Marcus nodded sympathetically. "I'm sorry, but yes. Your mother was instrumental in making this work. She provided the character assassination that made you a believable thief. But her involvement goes even deeper." He pulled out bank records that made my blood run cold. Your mother has been embezzling from your father's accounting firm for the past 3 years. Small amounts at first, but it accelerated recently. Nearly $70,000 total. She's been moving it through various accounts, but the pattern is clear to a forensic accountant. My hands shook as I studied the evidence. My mother, the woman who preached about integrity and appearances, was a thief herself. Megan found out about it 6 months ago, Marcus continued. Instead of exposing her, she used it as leverage. Help frame you for the wedding theft, and Megan keeps quiet about the embezzlement. Your mother agreed, probably thinking it would also permanently remove you from any inheritance discussions, leaving more for Megan to eventually control. Emma whistled low. So they're all criminals. Megan for insurance fraud, Helen for embezzlement, Rachel for tampering with security systems. Marcus nodded. And there's more. Tyler knew about the plan after the fact. His guilty conscience is what's been causing problems in their marriage. I interviewed a bartender from the wedding who overheard him arguing with Megan during the reception, before the theft was discovered. He was saying something about not being able to go through with it. But he did go through with it, I said bitterly. He stood there and accused me along with everyone else. Marcus pulled out another document. Actually, that's interesting. In his initial statement to the insurance company, Tyler was vague about the theft. It was Megan who provided all the specific details. I think he was pushed into it, and has been regretting it since. The evidence kept mounting. Marcus had security footage from businesses near the venue showing Rachel's car arriving 40 minutes before she claimed to have gotten there. He had sworn statements from 2 servers who saw her near the gift table during the ceremony, when she was supposedly in the church. He even had a recording from a guest's video that caught Helen in the background, coaching Aunt Linda on what to say about my supposed history of theft. The final piece, Marcus said, pulling out a USB drive, is this. James, Rachel's boyfriend, came to me yesterday. He's terrified of being charged as an accomplice. He agreed to wear a wire and get Rachel to confess. He plugged the drive into his laptop, and Rachel's voice filled the room, panicked and angry. I don't care what Megan promised. I corrupted that footage, I risked my boyfriend's job, I lied to the police. I want my full payment. Then James's voice, maybe we should just tell the truth. This has gone too far. Rachel's response chilled me, are you insane? We'd go to jail. Besides, Kathy deserves this. She's always been the family failure. At least now she's useful for something. I had to run to Marcus's bathroom, where I vomited until my stomach was empty. My own family had conspired to destroy me, not out of desperation or momentary bad judgment, but with cold calculation. They'd planned for weeks, maybe months, to make me a pariah, a criminal in the eyes of everyone I knew. And for what? Money they'd stolen through fraud anyway. When I returned to the office, Emma was reviewing more documents with Marcus. There's enough here to go to the police, she was saying. This is conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, defamation. Marcus agreed but cautioned us. We need to be strategic. The Hendersons are well connected. We go to the wrong person, and this evidence might disappear. I suggest we also contact the insurance companies directly. They'll be very interested in this fraud. What about the district attorney? I asked. Surely they'd want to prosecute this. Marcus considered this. I have a contact in the DA's office. Let me reach out quietly first. In the meantime, I suggest you prepare for backlash. Once your family realizes we're onto them, they'll get desperate. He was right to warn us. That very evening, Helen called Emma's phone, apparently having figured out where I was staying. Emma put it on speaker. Tell that ungrateful brat that if she continues spreading these vicious lies about our family, she'll regret it. We have resources she can't imagine. She should take her punishment and disappear quietly if she knows what's good for her. Is that a threat, Mrs. Henderson? Emma asked calmly. Because it sounds like witness intimidation to me. Helen's voice turned icy. It's a mother's advice to a daughter who's lost her way. Though I suppose I shouldn't call her my daughter anymore. Thieves and liars have no place in the Henderson family. The irony of a woman who'd stolen $70,000 calling me a thief was not lost on any of us. After she hung up, Marcus advised us to document everything. Record all calls, save all messages. They are panicking, which means they'll make mistakes. He was also going to arrange protection for James, who was now fully cooperating with authorities. Rachel's been threatening him too. Apparently, she's figured out his talking. The next bombshell came when Marcus discovered the full extent of the conspiracy. Through financial records and patient interviews with wedding guests, he'd uncovered that several valuable gifts had actually gone missing that day, but not because of theft. Megan and Tyler had removed them before the reception and hidden them, planning to claim they were stolen along with the cash. The actual value of missing items was close to $15,000 in addition to the mythical jewelry. They were going to blame it all on you eventually, Marcus explained. Make it seem like you'd been systematically stealing throughout the day. If we hadn't investigated, they might have added more claims later, painting you as some kind of master thief who'd planned this for months. The cruelty of it took my breath away. My sister hadn't just wanted me gone, she'd wanted me completely destroyed. As we prepared to take our evidence to authorities, I thought about the family I'd lost. The mother who'd chosen money over her daughter, the sister who'd orchestrated my downfall with surgical precision, the cousin who'd sold me out for cash, the father who'd stood by and let it happen. They'd traded me for money they'd obtained through lies and theft, becoming the very thing they'd accused me of being. But I also thought about what I'd gained. Emma's unwavering loyalty, Marcus's determination to find the truth, even James's eventual courage in coming forward. I'd learned that family wasn't about blood, but about who stood by you when the world turned against you. And now, armed with truth and evidence, I was ready to fight back against the people who'd tried to destroy me. The Hendersons had created their own downfall in their eagerness to push me off the cliff. It was time for them to face the consequences. The annual Henderson family reunion was always held at Grandma Dorothy's sprawling estate in the Berkshire Hills on the first Saturday of July. This year, I arrived uninvited, flanked by Emma and a journalist named David Chen whom Marcus had connected us with. My hands trembled as we pulled up to the familiar stone gates, but my resolve was steel. Today, the truth would detonate like a bomb in the middle of my family's carefully constructed lies. We could hear the gathering before we saw it. Laughter, children playing, the clink of glasses on the back terrace where 50-plus relatives gathered every year. I'd missed this reunion for the first time in my life, because of my exile, but now I was walking straight into the lion's den with evidence that would shatter their comfortable delusions. Cousin Jerome spotted us first as we rounded the garden path. His jovial expression morphed into shock, then anger. "You've got some nerve showing up here, Kathy. After what you did to Megan." His loud voice drew attention, and suddenly dozens of faces turned our way. I saw the exact moment Helen noticed me. She was holding court near the rose garden, no doubt spinning more tales of my supposed villainy, when her face went pale. "Call security," Helen commanded, but Grandma Dorothy's voice cut through the growing murmur. "This is my home, Helen, and Kathy is my granddaughter. She stays until I say otherwise." At 85, Dorothy Henderson commanded respect even from her most difficult daughter-in-law. She sat in her wheelchair like a queen on a throne, sharp blue eyes taking in the scene with interest. Megan emerged from the house, Tyler reluctantly in tow. She'd lost weight, her designer sundress hanging loose, and dark circles under her eyes that expensive concealer couldn't quite hide. "Get out," she hissed at me. "Haven't you done enough damage?" The irony might have been funny if it hadn't destroyed my life. "I've done nothing but be your scapegoat," I said, my voice carrying across the now silent gathering. "But I'm done being silent. I'm done letting you paint me as a thief when the real criminals are standing right here." I pulled out my phone, connected to a portable speaker Emma carried. "I have proof of my innocence. And proof of what really happened at your wedding." "She's lying," Helen interjected quickly, moving to Megan's side. "This is just desperate attention seeking from a girl who can't accept responsibility for her actions." But I saw Robert, standing near the bar, straighten with interest. He'd been drinking more heavily than usual, I noticed, and his eyes held a glimmer of something that might have been doubt about the official story. I pressed play on Rachel's recorded confession. Her voice filled the garden. "I corrupted that footage, I risked my boyfriend's job, I lied to the police. I want my full payment." The gathered relatives gasped, murmuring among themselves. Rachel herself, who'd been lurking near the dessert table, dropped her plate with a crash. "That's fake," she shrieked. "That's not even my voice. She's using AI or something." But Aunt Linda was staring at her daughter with dawning horror. "Rachel, what is she talking about? What payment?" Rachel's mouth opened and closed like a fish, no sound emerging. The family members nearest to her took subtle steps back, as if her guilt might be contagious. I didn't give them time to regroup. The next recording was from the wedding video, Helen's voice clear, as she coached Aunt Linda, "Remember to mention how Kathy always admired Megan's jewelry. Make it sound natural, like you're just recalling little things." Aunt Linda's face flushed red. "Helen, you told me those were genuine concerns. You said we were helping protect the family." "This is ridiculous," Megan tried to interject, but her voice lacked conviction. Tyler, I noticed, had stepped away from her, his face a mask of misery. David Chen, who'd been quietly recording everything, stepped forward. "Ms. Henderson, would you like to comment on the 3 insurance claims you filed after your wedding? Particularly the claim for $30,000 in jewelry that never existed." The color drained from Megan's face entirely. "I don't know what you're talking about. My jewelry was stolen, just like the money. But I had more ammunition. Marcus had done his work thoroughly." I pulled out printed copies of the forged appraisal documents, holding them high for everyone to see. "Except the appraiser whose signature is on these has been out of business for 2 years. You forged these documents, Megan. You committed insurance fraud." "You're insane," Helen said, but her voice wavered. "Robert, call our lawyer. This harassment has to stop." But Robert was staring at her with an expression I'd never seen before. "Helen, what's she talking about? What insurance claims?" It seemed my mother had kept even her husband in the dark about the full extent of the scheme. I decided it was time for the biggest revelation. But that's not even the worst part. The reason Mom was so eager to help frame me, the reason she's been so quick to disown me, is because Megan's been blackmailing her. I turned to Robert, my heart breaking for what I was about to do to him. "Dad, I'm sorry you have to learn it this way, but Mom's been stealing from your firm. $70,000 over 3 years." The silence was deafening. Robert's face went from confused to devastated to furious in the span of seconds. "What?" His voice was barely a whisper. Helen tried to reach for him, but he jerked away. "Robert, she's lying. Our daughter is a pathological liar. You know this." But Robert was already pulling out his phone, no doubt to check his business accounts he'd trusted his wife to manage. "It's true," Tyler suddenly spoke up, his voice cracking. Everyone turned to stare at him. Megan grabbed his arm, nails digging in, but he shook her off. "I can't do this anymore. It's all true. The theft was fake. The insurance claims were fraud. I didn't know until after, but I've been living with this guilt for weeks." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Kathy. I'm so sorry. I should have spoken up sooner." "Shut up," Megan screamed at him. "You spineless coward. You were happy enough to take the money when we needed it." And there it was, her confession in front of 50 witnesses. David Chen's camera captured every moment as Megan realized what she'd just admitted. The facade cracked completely as she turned on Tyler. "This is your fault. Your parents cut us off, and you said we'd figure it out together." Grandma Dorothy's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Enough." Despite her age, her voice commanded absolute authority. "Megan, did you frame your sister for theft?" Megan looked around wildly, seeking support that wasn't coming. Even Helen had gone silent, perhaps finally realizing the game was over. She was going to lose everything anyway, Megan said desperately. "At least this way, it served a purpose. We needed that money, Grandma. Tyler's parents were going to humiliate us, pull their support. My career would have been over if people knew we couldn't manage money. And Kathy, she's never been anything but a burden. Always needing help, always struggling. I thought if she was gone, really gone, we could all move forward." The cruelty of her words hit me like physical blows, but I forced myself to remain standing. Emma's hand found mine, squeezing support. Around us, family members were reacting with shock, disgust, and in some cases, shame for their own participation in my exile. Uncle George loudly declared, "I knew something wasn't right. I told you all, Kathy's not a thief." But I remembered his Facebook comments calling me a disgrace. Robert's phone call to his accountant confirmed what I'd revealed. He turned to Helen with a look of utter betrayal. "It's true. $70,000, transferred to various accounts." "My God, Helen, how could you? From our own business. From our employees' livelihoods." Helen's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. "I was going to pay it back. It was just borrowing. But then Megan found out, and she said if I didn't help her, she'd tell you, and I couldn't bear for you to know. So you sacrificed Kathy instead." Robert's voice rose to a roar I'd never heard from my mild-mannered father. "You destroyed our daughter to hide your own crimes." He turned to me then, and the pain in his eyes was almost unbearable. "Kathy, I'm so sorry. I failed you. I should have questioned it, should have defended you. I let them convince me." Rachel tried to slip away during the confrontation, but David Chen smoothly stepped into her path. "Ms. Whitman, as someone who admitted to corrupting security footage and lying to police, you might want to stay for the authorities." She burst into tears, mascara running down her cheeks. "Megan promised me $10,000. I just wanted to pay off my loans and start fresh. I didn't think it would go this far." The sound of sirens in the distance made several people freeze. Marcus had coordinated with law enforcement to arrive after I'd had a chance to present evidence, ensuring multiple witnesses to any confessions. As police cars pulled up to Grandma Dorothy's estate, the reality of the situation finally seemed to hit the conspirators. "You called the police on your own family?" Helen shrieked at me. "How could you be so vindictive?" The hypocrisy was staggering. "You framed me for crimes I didn't commit." You made me homeless, jobless, a complete pariah. You were ready to send me to prison for your own greed. And you ask how I could seek justice. As officers entered the garden, Marcus accompanying them with boxes of evidence, Grandma Dorothy beckoned me closer. I never believed it, she said quietly, aged hands gripping mine. I knew my Kathy wasn't a thief. But I'm ashamed I didn't speak up louder, didn't fight for you. She raised her voice so everyone could hear. Effective immediately, I'm changing my will. The education funds set aside for Rachel now go to Kathy. And Megan's inheritance is revoked entirely. The police took statements from multiple witnesses while Megan, Helen, and Rachel were read their rights. The charges were serious: insurance fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, filing false police reports, and more. Tyler, broken and cooperating fully, would likely face lesser charges for his delayed involvement. Robert stood alone by the rose garden, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. As my family was led away in handcuffs, various relatives approached me with apologies. Some seemed genuine, others merely self-serving attempts to get on the right side of the story. I accepted none of them. These people had been ready to believe the worst of me without question, had participated in my public shaming with enthusiasm. Their regrets meant nothing now. David Chen interviewed several family members, gathering reactions for what would become a viral story about family betrayal and false accusations. The headline would read, "Bridezilla frames sister in elaborate wedding scam," and it would destroy what was left of the Henderson family reputation. But I took no pleasure in it. I'd lost my family long before today. This was simply the funeral for relationships that had already died. As the sun set over Grandma Dorothy's estate, the reunion disbanded in chaos and recriminations. Emma drove me home while I sat in silence, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. I'd gotten my justice, proved my innocence, and exposed the real criminals. But the victory felt hollow. You can't rebuild trust that's been so thoroughly shattered. You can't say words meant to destroy. You can't undo months of pain with one afternoon of truth. But I was free. Free from the false accusations, free from the toxic family dynamics that had enabled this betrayal, free to rebuild my life without the weight of their lies. As we drove away from the estate, I didn't look back. The Hendersons had taught me that sometimes the most dangerous thieves are the ones who steal your trust, your reputation, and your peace of mind while calling themselves family. It was a lesson I'd never forget. 3 months after the explosive family reunion, I sat in my new office overlooking downtown's arts district, still sometimes pinching myself to make sure it was real. The nameplate on the door read, "Kathy Henderson, Creative Director of my own design firm," a dream I'd never thought possible when I was sleeping on Emma's couch, my life in ruins. The journey from pariah to entrepreneur had been painful, but transformative, teaching me that sometimes the worst betrayals can lead to the greatest freedoms. The immediate aftermath of the arrests had been a media circus. David Chen's article went viral within hours, picked up by major news outlets fascinated by the story of a bride who'd framed her own sister. The headlines were sensational: Wedding Bell Blues, How One Bride's Greed Destroyed a Family, and The Ultimate Bridezilla. Framing family for financial gain. My phone hadn't stopped ringing for weeks with interview requests, book deal offers, and messages from strangers who'd experienced similar family betrayals. But I'd turned down most of the opportunities to capitalize on the scandal. I didn't want to be defined by my family's betrayal for the rest of my life. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. Grandma Dorothy's redirected education fund gave me the breathing room to start fresh, and I used it wisely. Not for education in the traditional sense, but to educate myself on running a business, to invest in proper equipment, and to rent a small office space that would become the headquarters of my design firm. Emma became my business partner, bringing her marketing expertise to complement my design skills. "We make a good team," she'd said the day we signed our partnership agreement. "You create beauty, and I make sure the world sees it." Our first major client came through an unexpected source. One of Tyler's groomsmen, who'd witnessed the wedding disaster, reached out with a sincere apology and a lucrative contract for his tech startup's branding needs. Word spread quickly in the business community. Partly because of the notoriety from the case, but mostly because we delivered exceptional work. Clients appreciated our authenticity, our story of resilience, and our commitment to transparency in all business dealings. "After what you've been through," one client told me, "I know you value honesty above all else." That's rare in business. Within 3 months, we'd hired 2 junior designers and were turning down projects we didn't have capacity for. The legal proceedings against my family moved forward slowly but steadily. Megan faced the most serious charges, multiple counts of insurance fraud, conspiracy, and filing false police reports. Her law license was suspended immediately, and the firm she'd worked so hard to join dropped her like a hot potato. The last I heard, she was working as a paralegal for a small firm that specialized in traffic violations, a far cry from her corporate law ambitions. Helen's embezzlement case resulted in a plea deal, 2 years probation, and full restitution to Robert's firm. Their divorce was finalized last month, with Robert keeping the house and business while Helen moved to a small apartment across town. She'd tried to contact me several times through various channels, but I maintained my boundary. Some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness, at least not on her timeline. Rachel received 6 months in jail and 2 years probation for her role in the conspiracy. James, having cooperated fully with authorities, received only probation. He sent me a long apology letter that I actually read, unlike the others. He seemed genuinely remorseful for his part in enabling Rachel's crimes, and I appreciated that he'd eventually found the courage to come forward. Tyler's cooperation earned him a suspended sentence and community service. His family's reaction had been swift and brutal, complete disinheritance and public disownment. The Worthington name carried weight in certain circles, and they weren't about to let Tyler's scandal tarnish it. He and Megan's marriage lasted exactly 2 weeks after the arrests, before he filed for divorce, unable to live with the woman who'd turned him into a criminal. Robert was perhaps the most transformed by the experience. He'd sold his accounting firm, unable to face the employees after Helen's embezzlement became public. He now worked as a consultant, and had thrown himself into therapy to understand how he'd been so blind to his wife's crimes and his daughter's suffering. We met for coffee occasionally, rebuilding a relationship that had never been strong, but now had potential for honesty. "I was a coward," he told me during one of these meetings. "I saw Helen's favoritism, saw how she treated you differently, but I chose comfort over confrontation. I failed as a father, and I'm sorry." It didn't erase the past, but it was a start. He was also testifying for the prosecution in both Helen and Megan's cases, determined to see justice done. The extended family had splintered completely. Some relatives reached out with genuine apologies and attempts at reconciliation. Others doubled down on their support for Megan and Helen, creating warring factions at family events. Grandma Dorothy told me she'd stopped hosting reunions altogether. "What's the point of gathering family when they've shown such ugliness?" she'd said sadly. At 85, she deserved peace, not drama. Aunt Linda surprised everyone by divorcing Uncle Carl and moving to Florida, apparently unable to face the shame of her daughter's crimes and her own role in spreading lies about me. She sent me a long letter of apology that actually seemed sincere, acknowledging how her gossip and eagerness to believe the worst had contributed to my suffering. I didn't respond, but I appreciated the acknowledgement. My business continued to thrive, and with success came opportunities to give back. Emma and I established a small fund to help other victims of family fraud and defamation rebuild their lives. We'd received dozens of messages from people who'd experienced similar betrayals, and we wanted to help where we could. The fund provided legal consultation, temporary housing assistance, and job placement help for those whose families had turned against them. I also started seeing a therapist to process the trauma of the betrayal. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that my family's actions weren't about me at all, but about their own greed, insecurity, and moral failings. You were simply convenient, she explained. A scapegoat they could sacrifice for their own gain. It says nothing about your worth and everything about theirs. Slowly, I learned to separate my identity from their lies. Romance wasn't on my radar, but life has a way of surprising you. I met Daniel at a small business networking event, where he ran a sustainable packaging company. He knew my story, of course, everyone did, but he was more interested in my plans for the future than my painful past. Everyone has baggage, he said on our first coffee date. Yours just made headlines. His easy acceptance and genuine kindness were a balm to my battered heart. The irony of my success wasn't lost on me. Megan had called me a failure, a burden who contributed nothing. Helen had deemed me the family disappointment. Yet here I was, running a thriving business while they faced jail time and disgrace. The very creativity and independence they'd mocked had become my salvation. Sometimes I wondered if they regretted their choices, but mostly I tried not to think about them at all. One rainy evening, as I worked late in my office reviewing designs for a major client presentation, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Megan, calling from a borrowed phone. Kathy, her voice was barely recognizable. I know you hate me, but I need help. I've lost everything. Tyler, my career, my home. Mom won't help, because she's broke from the legal fees. I have nowhere else to turn. I sat in silence for a long moment, feeling the weight of her desperation through the phone. The sister who'd orchestrated my destruction was now experiencing what she'd tried to inflict on me. Megan, I finally said, you had everything. A successful career, a wealthy husband, parents who adored you. But it wasn't enough. You destroyed my life for money you obtained through fraud. You made me homeless, jobless, a pariah in my own family. And now you want my help. I know, she sobbed. I know what I did was unforgivable. I was desperate and stupid and cruel. But you're my sister. Doesn't that mean anything? I thought about her words carefully. It meant everything to me. That's why your betrayal cut so deep. Being sisters meant I trusted you completely, and you used that trust to frame me for your crimes. So no, Megan, I won't help you. Not because I'm vindictive, but because you need to face the consequences of your choices, just like I had to face the false consequences you created for me. I hung up and blocked the number, feeling neither satisfaction nor regret. Just a sense of closure. My therapist had taught me that forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation, and that protecting myself from further harm wasn't cruelty, but wisdom. Megan would have to find her own way forward, just as I'd had to when she'd taken everything from me. As I finished my work and prepared to head home to the beautiful loft apartment I'd recently purchased, I reflected on the strange turns life takes. A year ago, I'd stood in a parking lot in a ruined bridesmaid dress, cast out by everyone I loved. Now I had a thriving business, true friends, a cautious but promising romance, and most importantly, self-respect that no one could take away. The Henderson family had tried to destroy me with their lies and greed. Instead, they'd freed me from toxic relationships and limiting beliefs about my own worth. I'd learned that family isn't about blood, but about loyalty, that success isn't about others' approval, but about personal integrity, and that sometimes the greatest gift comes disguised as the deepest pain. My phone lit up with a text from Emma: dinner tomorrow to celebrate landing the Morrison Industries contract. I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. Tomorrow was full of possibilities, unburdened by the past. The Hendersons had stolen my trust, my reputation, and my peace of mind. But in trying to take everything, they'd given me the push I needed to build something entirely my own. They'd tried to bury me, not knowing I was a seed ready to grow into something they could never have imagined. As I locked my office and headed into the night, I thought about everyone watching my story unfold. How would you handle such betrayal from those meant to love you most? Have you ever had to rebuild your life from complete destruction? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of resilience and triumph. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of something better. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, sometimes the family that tries to break you only reveals how strong you really are.